Hello everyone, it's I, Mr. Big T Anderson, and this is The Knight's Book by Antiform. This is an FF8 fanfiction, obviously. Now, hopefully you enjoyed the art. If you enjoy everything, links down below to both the writer and the artist. Check out some of their works. Give them some good thumbs up, maybe a review, you know the drill. Have some good ones. Off we go! By the time of his first clear memory, The Sorceress Knight was his favorite movie. Whenever the orphanage had movie night, Cypher would vote to watch it. The other children grew tired of it, with the cheesy dialogue, dated special effects. But young Cypher Almasy never cared about that. He wouldn't admit it out loud, but the romance of it made him feel warm and fuzzy inside. Maybe his parents had had an adventure and fallen in love. Then they'd had him, and because they were adventurous, ended up going to war and never coming back. Surely that was why he had no family. Before long, he was pretending to be a knight and challenging all of the monsters, disguised as other children, of course, to fights to the death. It was during this time that the other children decided he was a bully. He couldn't hold back in a fight, not when the life of his sorceress was on the line. Eventually, he decided that if that's what they thought of him, it must be true. He grew bitter out of the relationships the other children had. Sis was great to everyone, but she was particularly close to whiny Squall. The others mostly stuck together. Cypher was the odd one out, he thought. Even once Sis disappeared, Zell and Kisti got adopted, and the remaining children were sent to live at Garden. Cypher felt alone. His former, almost siblings, seemed to forget him about him entirely, so he moved on as well. It was shortly after arriving at Balam Garden that Cypher met his two best friends, Fujin and Raijin, who had been sent from an orphanage in Galbadia that had been reached incapacity. The three clicked almost instantly and were practically inseparable from then on. The brightest and fastest learning of the trio, Cypher had nearly graduated early. It was a combination of his new contempt for authority and not wanting to leave behind his old friends that kept him from following orders during that first test. It became habit after that. Cypher liked spending afternoons studying with his friends. They tended to choose days when most other students were off training or goofing off to hit the library. It was a secret that the librarian kept the often left with stacks of books on every subject, and a few novels as well. It was a very little known fact that Cypher Almasy loved reading. History, politics, magic texts of all ages. Only two people, excluding himself, knew his favorite series of novels. On a particularly busy day for the cafeteria, which had just gotten a new, rather large shipment of hot dogs, Cypher found himself browsing the library alone. The Balam Garden Library had never been known for the stock of fiction, but there had always been a small section devoted to important pieces of literature, both Galbadian and Astharian, and a few popular novels. A new book series had been started the year before. It was a breakaway hit with Galbadian women. The second book had just been released. Someone in the library must have heard it was popular because they ordered a copy each of the first two books. Cypher hadn't really been looking for anything in particular. He simply decided that rather than fight the crowds for a stupid hot dog, he'd take a look around. That was when he saw the new books, The Sorceress's Knight. They said in small letters on the spine. They first even had a caption based on the classic movie. He took a look around, saw no one, took the chance, and checked out both books. He barely acknowledged the librarian's confused face as she checked the books out for him. It didn't take long to find out just why she'd been confused, though Cypher wondered why he hadn't figured it out simply from the cover art. They were romance novels, set a few hundred years ago. Sure, the books also had adventures, but there was plenty of action, both in the field and in the sheets. Raijin returned to their shared dorm room to find his bunkmate engrossed in a pretty heavy scene, the first of the many sex scenes in the series. He knew better than to make a big deal of his best friend's reading choice, though he was able to get a few good-natured jokes in before the blonde reminded him that his favorite books were written for children, so he could shut his fucking mouth. They both decided never to tell Fu about their guilty pleasures. When the second Sorceress War broke out and the trio found themselves in the thick of it, Cypher, in his more lucid moments, decided that there was no romance to it at all. Maybe sometime in the past, when things weren't so complicated and global. Knights had romance and adventures. This war, not one of them. The war that took his parents had not been one of them. He honestly didn't remember much from the war, and he didn't know if it was because of the magic and the manipulation, or simply his brain blocking it all out. He remembered being angry sometimes, driven in all the wrong ways at other times. Idia thought it was a good thing, perhaps, that he couldn't remember much, though the courts declared that it was suspicious. In the end, no one could be sure who had been controlled directly and who hadn't. Cypher surely didn't know. His best friends swore he hadn't been the same. He wasn't the same after either. Disillusioned, he thought to abandon his dreams of romance and adventure as a knight. The only living sorceress left was the ex-girlfriend who had moved on to the perfect new commander of Balam Garden after all. After the trials, Cypher disappeared for a while. Fujin and Raijin found jobs in Fisherman's Horizon and didn't see him for months until he wandered into town one spring evening. They never asked where he'd been, only if he'd stay. The three friends stayed there until Idia insisted that they re-enroll. There was a huge argument, with Zell being the most vocal about why they shouldn't return, and Squall, surprisingly, insisting that they should. Raijin was particularly excited about returning. He'd never been the smartest of the three, but he certainly had always been the most excited about learning. Fujin spoke more than usual the day they decided, though she was fine either way. She wasn't about to let them separate. Still unsure, Cypher agreed to return home. The condition of their re-enrollment was simple: pass the seed exam the following year. If they couldn't, they'd be expelled permanently. The study sessions behind locked dorm rooms from before the war were no more. The trio was often seen in the library, brushing up on everything from history, strategy, bestiaries, and magical theory, and when they couldn't be found studying, they were training, making up for the more sedentary lifestyle of Fisherman's Horizon. The written exam was given in two groups of about 30 students each. Fujin and Raijin were in the first group, Cypher in the second. It was during his friend's exam that Cypher wandered into the library, intent on getting a quick review in before his own test. He was sitting in a corner desk with a few history books when the librarian approached him. They'd never really talked before. They hadn't even had classes before. But they shared one little secret. "There's a new one," she told him before he realized she was there. He looked up from his notes confused. "There's a new one, the Sorceress Knight. It came out while you were gone. It's really good. I think you'll enjoy it." She didn't mention why he was gone, just set the new volume on the desk in front of him and went back to work. As he left after checking it out, she barely heard his thanks. So, that was the Night's Book by Antiform. Hopefully you enjoyed the art. Trying to make things a little bit more showy. At least one piece per. And we'll be moving forward. Links down below to Antiform as well as the artist's page. And see you all later. Ta-ta for now.